a round of applause and welcome Julie Master.
Thank you very much. Oh, there's some music. It's just like a dancing entrance into the room. Now, I don't know if you noticed at the beginning of that video there was a quote. It was by Eric Qualman, who actually created that video that you just saw. And the quote said that we will not have a choice about whether we digitally transform. The choice will be how well we do it. And when I saw that quote, I thought, yes. But actually there's something missing from that quote, and it's speed. How well and how fast we do it. Because if you look at the companies and the brands that have gone into decline over the past kind of 12 to 18 months, it wasn't because they didn't have an intention to transform, right? It wasn't because they didn't want to, it wasn't because they didn't intend to, it wasn't because they didn't know it was even necessary. It was because they didn't execute fast enough. And so that's what we're here to do today. We're here to focus on execution. This is the execution zone. So we're here to focus on execution. So quick raise of hands for me. Who, if you're really honest, who feels like you're moving at the speed you need to be in order to reach the potential of your influence in the marketplace? And I don't just mean, do more with the same amount of hours, juggle more balls. I'm talking about jump in, try new things, try new platforms, let go of perfect, use your voice, step outside your comfort zone. Not many of us. There's one over there, there's always... I'm going to bring you up. Not many of us, right? Not many of us. So why? Why is that? Again, we all intend. So why is that? Now, I'm actually, this is going to be like a full contact sport, just so you know. I want you to turn to the person next to you, because we have time today to really get into this. I want you to turn to the person next to you. Just have a very brief discussion about what do you feel the main barriers for you personally between what you intend to execute on and what actually gets executed. And here's a hint, it might not be out there. It might actually just be in here. So, quick discussion. What is the barrier to execution? So who's going to play? Like, talk to me. Who's willing to share with the room? Because it's all the same for all of us.
Yeah.
Time.
You know, we're both saying the same thing.
Time?
No, it's not time. It's the fear of what you're putting out and what people are going to think about it.
Yes. Perfect. It's the word perfect. I have a saying. It's called, if I ever wrote a book, it would be called It's Version 8. Yeah. Because it's always version 8. Yeah. Like, whatever you put out there first sucks, and then second time, and then third time, and you keep learning, and eventually version 8 is the one where you would actually be willing to show anybody. But the unfortunate thing is you've got to get through versions 1 to 7 and get some feedback before version 8 can be any good. So you have to embrace the suck of versions 1 to 7. That's the other book, Embrace the Suck. So what else? What else? Barrier.
If you go back behind that fear, it's the underlying thing of self-worth and worthiness. So I call it like the inner mean girl.
Yeah.
So she's the one that's saying that version 1 is shit.
Yeah. I was actually in a room yesterday talking to a group of lawyers about imposter syndrome, and the number one question behind imposter syndrome being, who do you think you are? And the fear that somebody else will ask you that question, or worse, that you will ask yourself that question. And you will 1,000 different ways on 1,000 different days. Everybody does. And so to get over the fear of that question, who do you think you are? One more barrier. I'm gonna go to the back.
I think time's a huge one in terms of there's so many platforms out there. So when we just started going to TikTok for our tweens for their mental health, and that's been exploding on TikTok. But then we've got to manage our LinkedIn, our Instagram, Facebook, should we even be on Twitter? They're the questions that we're constantly asking ourselves, going, well, we actually need someone to manage that, to be able to respond to comments and stuff like that as well. So I think under-resourced sometimes, and then also where should we be really razor focusing our time, our marketers, because in mental health, our market's kind of everywhere.
Yeah, the sheer volume of platforms, fragmented attention. What do you double down on? Do you just do a little bit on everything, or do you just double down on a few? Both great questions, and we'll get into those a little bit more, and it depends on your market, it depends on what you're trying to do, but you can't do everything really, really well without having a full marketing team. And that's not always resource available. So thank you. My obsession, and what's kept me pretty busy over the last 20 years of my career, is the world of influence. Particularly what it is, where it lives, what it does, and how it can be used to propel an individual, an idea, a conversation, an organization, a brand, or some cases even a nation. So that's where I've spent a lot of my time, all trying to pretty much just decode this one question. What makes an influencer? What makes an influencer? What makes an influential brand? Now, this is the best description that I have been able to come across in 20 years. And it's simply this: an individual or company recognizes the authority in their field who is highly sought after and highly remunerated. That's an influencer. So that raises the next question, right? Which is how do we become that thing? I'm going to kick off today. I want to take you through a bit of a whistle-stop tour through some of the large trends that are happening now in influence that myself and my team have been watching and keeping an eye on, some things that have been happening, some things that are happening at the moment, and how they're going to impact that landscape that we're trying to go out and be seen in, we're trying to go out and stand out in. Now, some things like technology, as per usual, are moving at pace, at speed. Other things, like human nature and our drivers, are not moving very quickly at all, which is good news, because technology is driven by human behavior. So, what are some of the things that are happening that are changing this landscape? Number one, in 2018, Facebook changed their algorithms to prioritize meaningful interactions. So to take the attention away from brands and media messages and into interactions where you have loyalty, they call it loyalty and intent with that person or that individual or that brand. Now, what does that mean? That's a really interesting shift, and that algorithm's been changing throughout 2019 as well to more and more refine. It's a shift away from heavily branded messages that are just simply brand-based. And you're going to see that more and more. I mean, who here's got Netflix? Yep, Stan. Yep, YouTube Premium. Subscription-based news. New York Times this year, their subscription, the revenue that they generate from subscription alone is going to go over $1 billion. So we're moving away from mediums that rely on advertising, and we're moving towards meaningful interactions. We're moving towards value-based communication with individuals and with brands. That's a huge shift. Second one that we're seeing, video. This is pretty much old news, but it's going nowhere. Video is king. According to Cisco, 82% of all search by 2022 will be video. People looking for videos. 22%. And actually, according to Google, recently, 50%, get this, 50% of YouTube subscribers between the ages of 18 and 34 would stop whatever they were doing if a new live video popped up from someone or a brand that they cared about. Like, whatever they were doing, 50%, that's insane cut through. Insane. So video is, as I said, it is king, queen, it's going nowhere. What's next? Oh. Okay, I have to talk to you about the egg. So, has anyone heard of the influential egg? Yes. Heard of the influential egg. So, this popped up, and I find it really interesting other than just being odd. So, the influential egg cropped up last year. The influential egg came up, and it received 53 million likes. 53 million, and this is all it did. Like, no more than that. Didn't recite Shakespeare, or it was like just that. At that point, I think Kylie Jenner had the record there of likes, which is, not the best metric for success, but likes of 18 million. The influential egg was voted by Time magazine in the top 25 most influential people on the internet. Which is ridiculous. And you couldn't make this stuff up, but what's interesting about it, other than it just being ridiculous, what's interesting about it is it was started as an experiment. It was started as an experiment to see if somebody could decode attention. See if somebody could break down this new age of influence into some core set of rules and get cut through and attention and emotional engagement. The influential egg actually ended up being on at halftime in the Super Bowl. And it actually ended up doing some good because it used its power of influence to support mental health. So it has a happy ending to that story, but speaks a lot to our ability to be able to break this stuff down and replicate it. If an egg can do it, so can you. I want to share this video with you.
welcome back to my channel.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, my name is William Kirk.
Hi, guys.
Welcome. I wanna go, I gotta get on the floor. Say, hey, a white snake. I like it when you do. Gotta move my body, boy.
Their new Clinique ID skincare line. It's one that you can customize your skincare to your skin's needs.
Living in the attitude, I got something you can do. You could put my record on, you could play my favorite song. One way the bass goes. I got my dance floor, I am the door. I am the dance floor, I am the door. I am the dance floor, I am the door. I am the dance floor, I am the door.
Who's heard of Macy's? Who knows of Macy's? Yes. Last year, Macy's kicked off this campaign. They called it the Style Crew. And what Macy's had noticed is that the amount of money they were spending on branding and advertising and also external influencers just wasn't getting them the return. Ooh. Yes, I think so. I think it's just the end of the video. Wasn't getting them the return that they were looking for. And so what they did was they went, oh, hang on. Within our walls, we have a bunch of passionate people. We have people who are really into fashion. And what they found out, which is what we now know, is that the network, the combined network within the walls of an organization is 600 times larger than the network of the organization itself. And they're like, what if we can tap into that? That's a huge opportunity. These guys love fashion. They know other people who love fashion. And so they went to them, so this style crew that they created, it was about 20 people at first. And they said, what if we support you? We'll give you a platform. We'll shine a light on you. We'll empower you. We'll tool you up. Go out there, talk about the things that you love, the way that you love to talk about them. They did that and it went off. It's now 400 people. Now they're incentivizing with commissions. So if these members of staff can sell via their networks, and it's not strong selling, it's not, hey, buy this. It's like, hey, you guys know what I do, you know what I love. This jacket came in, oh my goodness. I've been waiting for this jacket to come in. I got to work at 8 a.m. this morning, it's here. Who here wants me to put one aside for you? They're now paying commissions on this. Now this co-creation with the people within your walls is a massive trend, and it's going to completely disrupt retail as we know it. And not only B2C, IBM also have done a campaign very similar with great results that we're going to be talking about a little bit later. So this isn't just B2C, this is B2B as well. So what else has been going on? Celeste Barber, just a head down moment of appreciation for her. So Celeste Barber, during the bushfire, put out a message requesting support, requesting donations. 24 hours later, she had raised $51 million. Yes, just a round of applause for her. Incredible, incredible. Now, other than that just being an incredibly generous thing to have done, what's interesting about that is that this could never have happened before. I don't know of a single organization or government organization that could have pulled that off in 24 hours. So this trend is speed. This is the trajectory that we are able to tap into now. You can now go from a nobody to a somebody, or a conversation that no one's having to a conversation that everyone is having in under 24 hours, mobilize millions of people in almost 280 characters or less. Now that potential has never existed before in the history of mankind before digital came along. Now you better be good when you get there. You better have a product worth buying, an idea worth buying into, a movement worth following. But it's that speed that I want you to understand how quickly this can move. Something else that's interesting from a crowdfunding perspective, again, while we're talking about influence, crowdfunding has disrupted everything, the disseminated influence of lots of people. In the States, I think back at President Obama's time, it was $350 million he managed to raise via crowdfunding. He was the first one to do it. Now, just this presidential campaign, $3.9 billion has been raised for candidates through crowdfunding. And crowdfunding is even starting to influence policy, where people are saying, if you push this particular piece of legislation through, we will give you this amount of money that we've just raised for anyone who's willing to do that. Now that's insane. That's a lot of influence. That's the power pyramid completely shifting. And funnily enough, just May of last year, 2019, was the first time Australia passed a law that stopped anyone from another country being able to fund a politician. So prior to that, if they had wanted to, Italy could have got together and decided to fund a candidate in Australia. So all this stuff is moving really, really fast. 96%, this is probably the most interesting stat that I have from you for a trends point of view for business people. 96% of every single thing that you look at online, that you consume, and as we saw in the video, 93% of your buying decisions are now influenced by what you consume online. 96% of it is unbranded, which is just a really fancy way of saying it comes from an individual and not a brand. 96% of all of our buying decisions, of all of the things that we consume, that we choose to follow, comes from individuals now. Now, some of those individuals live within brands. This is not a move away from brands. But it's you harnessing the power of human that we're talking about now. All the digital world has enabled us to do is follow our most basic human driver, and that is that people follow people. People connect to people, people trust people. Trust right now in brands is 35%, trust in individuals, 65%. Something which I think doctors are struggling with a lot at the moment, because if you're anything like me, Google diagnosing at 2 a.m. and then going into the doctors in the morning with a sheet and just going, I don't know, I think we all have this. No one's sleeping, I think it's this. This is another super fascinating trend or event that's happened. Kylie Jenner, everyone know Kylie Jenner? Who is not prepared to admit that they know who Kylie Jenner is? Thank you. So Kylie Jenner, she started a makeup company, I think it was about 2 years ago now. In its first 18 months, it made $420 million. It sold $19 million in one day for one lipstick in a 24-hour period. $19 million. Predictions are that she'll hit $1 billion by 2022. How long do you think it took L'Oreal to hit $1 billion? 80. 80 years. Now, who thinks that she's going to make that? Who thinks she's going to hit that goal? Yeah, you're right, she did last year, April. 3 years ahead of target. And again, this is trajectory. This is the power of the human being. So what does all of that mean? Basically, what all of that means is these are the trends that are impacting the landscape you're trying to stand out in right now. These are the trends that are impacting where the attention lives, how quickly it moves, how we engage, who we trust, who we want to work with, who we want to work for, what we want to buy, and how we want to buy it. Now, what myself and my team do is we take all of that and we codify it down into what we call the influencer code, and the ability to be able to work with people and organizations to try and amplify their influence in the marketplace. And this is the influencer code in kind of a nutshell. 6 key elements. And what we do is we take these 6 key elements, what we're going to do today, we're going to take those 6 key elements and we're going to use it to design for influence. We're going to use it to design businesses, communications, how we show up, where we show up, what we say when we show up for influence. Does that sound like a decent way to spend some time? Yeah. Awesome. Now, here's the rub. What I want from you today, because we're all here and we're all here just with one purpose, and that's for you to get shit done. That's why we're here. And so my ask of you is that you stay curious. I'm going to show you different businesses, different business models, some of which you might sit back and go, well, that's, I'm B2C and that's B2B. I'm B2B and that's B2C. I'm not in marketing, so that doesn't apply to me. Or whatever the story is, and we all have them. I just want you to step back for a second and get really, really curious. If something works, what's the grain of it you can take? And how can you apply it? Because that's where the quantum leaps come in. When you get your radar out and you take pieces of things that are working and then you bring them back. So we're going to get curious and we're going to apply some stuff. Yeah? Done. All right, let's kick it off. Clarity. Clarity is probably one of the biggest ones. You cannot own a space successfully unless you're clear about what space it is that you want to own. Cannot own a space unless you're clear about what space you want to own. Now, when I first started out in sales and in marketing, you could own a huge space, we call it like a macro space. You could own a massive space. You could own real estate. You could own software. You could own cooking. You could own health and wellness. You know, there were very few people across very few platforms, and, you know, it was rarefied air up there with the gurus and the brands that we respected. As we've seen, there's way too many people across way too many platforms making way too much noise now to be able to own a massive space, and yet most companies are still trying to do that. Trying to, you know, if I shout to as many people as possible, someone's going to want what I have. And the key to influence now is to become a micro-authority. It's hyper specialization, where I know exactly what you or what your brand does quickly, I know where to find you, and I know how it fits with my exact situation. Well, you're speaking to me. You know the difference between when someone, you know when you're in a crowded room and it's really noisy, or a crowded restaurant and someone calls your name? What do? You like turn around because they called you. As opposed to, if someone's trying to get your attention by just waving. That's the difference between being a macro authority and a micro authority. So hyper specialization. So what I want you to do is I want you to do a bit of a social experiment with me. So you've all got your phones. I know you've all got your phones. Get them out if you haven't got them out. And what I want you to do is I want you to talk to the person next to you, and I want you to ask them their name. Start off by asking them if you don't know it already. And what I want you to do is I want you to Google them. So I can see you all like trying to think of a fake name right now to protect your secrets. Hang on. Whoa. Hold on. Hold. Before you go any further, I want you to Google them. Then what I want you to do, other than just laugh at their photos, is I want you to try and tell them what space it is that you think that they own, based on what you find. All right, go. All right, who here was just thrilled with what the other person found? Who here was like, awesome? Who was like, I just nailed that? Yeah? Perfect. Who was kind of just like, yeah, that's all right, that's fine. Yeah, that's all right. Who here just could not be found at all, was just missing from the internet? Okay, that could be deliberate. I'm not gonna, I don't know. Missing in the noise. Okay, interesting. And who here was just, super surprised to find that they were actually a pole dancer living in Texas and had no idea?
So I'd own that, but
Yeah, she's like, I wish that were true. I wish that were true. So why did I get you to do that? Why did I get you to do that? I got you to do that because that's what we do, right? That's what we do. We look people up on the internet. It's very simple. According to Harvard University, over 50% of decisions now are made about a brand or an individual before we ever reach out. We make up our mind over 50% of the time about whether we're going to buy into or buy from someone or an entity before they even know we exist. Now, they have a very fancy word for it. I would just call it Google stalking. Most of our decisions, and our dating decisions, by the way, most of our decisions are made by Google stalking now. And so you better stand out. You and your brand had better stand out in those moments. And the way that you stand out is when I feel like you are talking exactly to me. You are talking my language to my situation. Micro-authorities get 4 times more engagement than people who try and own too large a space. 4 times more engagement. That's massive. And so how do we work it out? How do we figure out what we want our hyper-specialization or our micro-authority to be? That's the next logical question. In my experience, it's a pretty simple way of starting this process, and it's called an influence intersection. And that is where you take one world where you have mastery, experience, and insights, and you take another world where you have mastery, experience, and insights, and that space in the middle, that's where you stand out. So I'll give you a couple of examples. Let's talk about Jamie Oliver. Everyone know Jamie? Jamie Oliver? So when Jamie Oliver first started out, I don't know if you remember, I remember, there was a lot of 6-star chefs at that point, a lot of very famous, serious-looking chefs with like big white hats. And he had also cooked in 6-star restaurants, but he was never going to stand out there. That wasn't a world where he could stand out. And so he took it and he combined it with another world where he had mastery, experience, and insights. And that was the world of the family, the world of feeding a family quickly, healthily, hopefully on budget. He combined those 2 worlds in that space in the middle, the credibility of his background plus his passion. That was a space where he could stand out. Give you another one, I'll give you a B2B example this time. Let's talk about Apple. Now, when Steve Jobs and Wozniak at Apple first started out, they were going up against the IBMs and the Microsofts of the world. And those guys knew engineering, like they owned engineering. And so they were never going to stand out there. They were never going to stand out from an engineering context. So what they did is they combined it with another world where they had mastery, experience, and insights. And that was the world of the innovator, the creative. And that space in the middle, that's where Apple dominated. And so that's the power of taking two worlds and combining them. Now, where this works the best is where you take a world that you own absolutely, where you have credibility and passion, and you know the language, and you combine it with another world where you know the language, but a world that's important to your customer. That's where it starts to get really powerful. So I'm going to show you a quick example of a company that's just nailing it by using this at the moment.
Hi, I'm Jen Hatch. I'm the managing partner at Christopher Street Financial. We're based in New York City. The firm has always been a little different. It has always been focused on the LGBTQ community. If you don't know what that means, you could look it up, but I'll give you a hint. For many years, our slogan was gay money, straight advice. I felt for many years when I was working at Bear Stearns, wouldn't it be nice to be able to be myself? Wouldn't it be nice to be able to work with people in the LGBT community? Wouldn't it be nice to work with individuals who really appreciated what I had to say? You know, I was working with portfolio managers, and it's, you know, what can you tell me that I don't already know? That was the world I came from. Our firm exists because there wasn't inclusion. It didn't feel safe for people to go to the average financial advisor on Main Street. When I bought the firm, it was the beginning of the marriage equality movement, and because same-sex couples couldn't get married, there were lots of financial planning issues that we had to take care of. My life and my clients' lives are a lot easier now that marriage is in existence. It just makes planning easier. Financial planning doesn't work unless people really can be themselves and can communicate who they care about and what their values are and what their hopes and dreams are. And they're not going to talk to you about any of those things if you don't seem to value who they are and if you don't ask who they are.
Now, a couple of questions on that one. Firstly, are you clear about what they do? About who they are, about who they serve? Now, that's one of the fastest growing, most successful companies on Wall Street at the moment. Second question is, would you want to work for her? Yeah, hella yes. And from a leadership perspective, this is where this gets really powerful. Stepping out from behind a brand, communicating authentically, sharing stories, sharing passion, vision. Not perfect. Was that perfectly produced? No. Was that snazzy and lights and, you know, crazy background behind her? No, it was just her on a stool. So this is the power of how things are shifting from a storytelling point of view, and I think that's important to point out. So what I want you to do from an execution standpoint now is two things. First thing, I actually forgot to get you to do at the beginning, so I'm going to get you to do it now, is I want you to take a Post-it note, and I want you to write on it one thing this year that if you can execute on it, if you can nail it, and I don't care if it's an idea, a project, a conversation, I don't mind what it is, but if you can do that by the end of the year, you'll feel pretty good about yourself. So can you just do that for me now? Get a Post-it note, write it down, and then stick it to the desk in front of you. All right, once you've done that, what I want you to do, I want you to stick it. You can either stick it in your book if you don't want anyone else to see it. You can stick it in front of you if you don't mind it being on the table. But every single thing that we talk about this morning, and we've got a morning together, every single thing, I want you to look at that Post-it note and go, how could I apply this to that? How could I take that piece of information and apply it to hitting that goal, executing on that thing? And then write it down. And so you're hopefully going to come away with a whole bunch of stuff that's going to help you execute on that one thing. Yeah? Because if we execute one thing at the end of the year that we're insanely proud of, is that not a good year? It's a pretty good year. Hopefully there's more, but one I will take. So now what I want you to do, I want you to, at your desks, with your notepad and pen, or if you want to, it makes me very nervous, but apparently you can write on the walls, which as a mother just goes against all of my instincts to tell anyone to write on a wall. Apparently you can write on the wall. Just stand up, and I want you to use the space. I want you to have a look at this influence intersection. What two worlds can you combine where you speak the language, you have mastery, insights, and experience? What two worlds can you combine, and then what space is that? What space can you own? Second question, if that leaves you with a really small target market that could possibly only feed you for a week, try again. Keep going, because this is commercial. It needs to be a space that can keep you fed very happily in the long term. Okay, once you finish doing that, up and moving around, do whatever you want to do. What's your influence intersection?
Guys, Ree over there has got some massive
Oh,
posters
perfect.
on the wall if you feel nervous about walls.
If you feel nervous about writing on walls. I was speaking at an event in Melbourne just yesterday. And who's been to Melbourne recently? Been to Melbourne? Has anyone come across Loon in Melbourne? The croissant shop, Loon. Oh, when you go to Melbourne, check it out. There's a queue out of the door, down the street, every single morning. Loon was started by this woman who's an astrophysicist. She's an astrophysicist. She used to work on Formula One cars to get them to go faster and faster and faster. So she used to work in Formula One. She quit, decided that she loved baking, decided that she loved croissants, then spent 3 years trying to apply astrophysics to croissants. Takes her like more than 24 hours to bake these things. New York Times just voted them the best croissant in the world. They're about to open in Sydney, I read in the Qantas magazine on my way here yesterday. So, but who here wants to try a croissant that an astrophysicist made? Yes, you do. And two worlds. Two strange worlds, but two worlds. You take lessons and the language that you know from one, and you apply the mastery and insights that you know from the other. And that's when you stand out. And just by the way, for business owners, this can also apply very powerfully downline as well. So I was talking to a financial services company recently, and they were saying, you know, it's quite hard for us to do this at a brand level at the moment in the current marketplace. But how we are doing it is we're doing it at a consultant level. We're doing it at an advisor level. So you come in and you say, look, we were just having this discussion. I'm struggling with a transition at the moment. My husband and I are separating, or my wife and I are separating. And there's got to be a lot of legal ramifications for how we handle our money from here on in. And they go, okay, I'm going to stop you there. We have somebody in here that just specializes in transitions. So I'm going to make you an appointment with them. Now, would you go to that appointment knowing that they specialize in your world? Of course you would. So it doesn't have to just be at brand level. It can also be at advisor, consultant, employee level as well. It can be equally as powerful there. So let's keep moving. Let's keep moving. Oh, before I do, actually, a bit of an insight from Elon Musk. He's always nice. So when someone asked him the secret to his success, actually, no, they didn't ask him. They asked his ex-wife the secret to his success. And she came back with this. And if you look at it, that's pretty much what he's done with every single business that he's started. So I'm going to keep you moving. So next one on the list, contribution. Contribution. I want you to write this down because this is probably the most valuable thing I'm going to say all morning. You can forget the rest. There's just this one. The future doesn't belong to those who outspend. The future belongs to those who outcontribute. Future doesn't belong to those who outspend, it belongs to those who outcontribute. And I think that we forget this quite frequently. And I think also probably because we have decades and decades and decades of marketing advice that tells us quite the opposite. Now, I studied marketing and public relations and advertising, and pretty much you could take 4 years of my academic career and boil them down into that one message. If you want to stand out, you need to outspend, outshout, and out-interrupt everybody else in the marketplace. Outspend, outshout, and out-interrupt. Now, who loves being interrupted? Anyone just sat at home thinking, oh, if only a telemarketer would call me. We'd have the best chat. You put your hand up. No one's ever put their hand up to that. I'm going to your house on a Friday night. No one. Who loves being shouted at? Who loves the fact that the volume on the ad goes up in the ad? No one loves that. And yet that is the primary way that we have been taught to seek and earn attention. Outspending, outshouting, and out-interrupting. And it doesn't work anymore. A lot of the most powerful platforms now at their very basis have a free option that can be incredibly impactful. I'll tell you a story, very, very true story. My mum, so about 6 months ago, my mum called me, she's 70. And she was like, hey up, love, because that's actually what she sounds like. Hey up, love. She's like, do you know what, I figured something out, and it's amazing. What I do is I watch EastEnders, I turn it on, and then I press pause. And then I go, and I make a cup of tea, and then I come back, and then I press play, and then I fast forward all the ads. Yeah. It's brilliant. And so if my mum doesn't even have an email account, like seriously doesn't have an email account. If my mum has figured out how to stop people from outspending, outshouting, and out-interrupting to get her attention, what do you think the future of those strategies are? It's not good, is it? It's not great. And yet, this is what we do. This is what we are trained to do. This is what I would prefer, or rather than my preference, which is irrelevant, this is what works now in a new age of influence. We need to stop interrupting people, and we need to start becoming what they're interested in, because they can tune us out so easily now. Skip on YouTube, fast forward ads, paid subscriptions, taking away all advertising. No one checks direct mail anymore. Everyone hates pop-ups. Nobody wants email newsletters. Unsubscribes are through the roof. So how do we do that? How do we do that? We start paying attention to what works in a new age of influence as opposed to what worked previously. What worked previously was out-interruption. Just going to keep shouting at you until eventually you pay attention and learn to love me. Now we're in an out-contribute model. What worked previously was divided, was a division between sales and marketing, where sales did one thing, marketing did another, and never the twain shall meet, Mars and Venus. Now those two powers have to work very much hand in hand in a continual feedback loop if it's going to work. And if you are the salesperson and the marketer, that means that you have to be aligned. You have to stop your discomfort with sales or your discomfort with marketing and learn how to integrate both. Generic to personalized. Again, the shout the same message at everybody model has gone now. It's not successful. Personalized messaging. Again, the digital world, all it's given us is reams and reams and reams of data. You can now completely tailor your messaging. You can tailor your messaging to a particular woman whose children go to a particular school in a particular area who's interested in boats, if you want to. So we have the ability to get very, very personalized. All about us to all about you. Again, marketing has tended to be, let me tell you what I think you should know about me. We used to have a rule in my office. It was called the keep it or share it rule. And as far as I know, the team that worked with me then, we still have it. Most of us still have it today. If it is not valuable enough for someone to either keep it, save it, to refer back to it again later, or share it with someone they know, then it doesn't leave the building. Keep it or share it. That's contribution. And contribution is the opposite of interruption. It's the opposite of force. Brand-driven to human-driven. Again, trust and attention is living with the human beings right now. And the brands that are being really successful are harnessing the human beings within their walls. Collection to action. Again, I think as companies and brands, and specifically salespeople, we have a collection addiction. I know that I used to have. You remember you used to collect business cards? You remember that? You'd have like a pile of them, you'd be like, any day now I'm going to put that in the database. Yeah. Any day now. Yeah, still. And now we do it on LinkedIn. Now we're like, connect, 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 friend, friend, friend. And we feel really good about ourselves and we go get a coffee. And it doesn't work. It doesn't work. They're just sitting there unactivated. I would rather you have 500 people who are connected to you, who appreciate you, who trust you, who would share you with everybody that they know, than 5,000 people who like your breakfast. One is influence, the other is popularity, and there is a big difference between those two metrics. And we focus far too much on popularity and not enough on influence, and they're very different things. Brand and product focused to buyer journey focused. It's more and more now about where your buyer is in their journey, tailoring your message to where the buyer is in their journey, than it is particularly about your brand or your product. If you speak exactly to me in the situation that I find myself in this moment, you're going to get my attention. Information-based is story-based, which is, I think all of us know that at some level. We connect to stories, we engage with stories. Stories is how we build emotion, engagement, and most importantly, action. So here's what I want you to do, mainly because my voice is about to go. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to look at the now column. See this now column? I want you to have a chat with the person next to you. What brand or company do you think is just nailing that now column right now? Where you follow everything that they do, you buy from them consistently, you engage with them, you trust them. Who do you think is doing a really great job in that now column? Have a quick chat and see if you can come up with at least one company each, or individual, who's nailing it. Quick share with me. Who did you pick? Who did you, hands up, just shout out some for me. Red Bull. Sorry, I heard Apple, I heard
Red Bull.
Red Bull, so tell me a little bit about Red Bull.
The guy was saying that, you know, some of the younger kids in the team as well are just infatuated in buying Red Bull and drinking Red Bull, and they seem like they go and follow the Red Bull sports and the events that they do.
Yeah.
So that whole sponsorship of like high octane X Games and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, Red Bull do an amazing job in that now column. They do human-driven. Yeah. They do story-based. It's all story-based. They do co-creation. They completely out-contribute. The people that follow them love everything that they get from Red Bull. GoPro's another amazing example in that space. Who else?
So Gary Vee, that's not a brand.
No, Gary Vee, he's a brand. He's definitely a brand, and he's someone I follow, and he very much lives in that as well. If you're a business owner or somebody who's trying to get shit done, then it's all personalized to you. It's absolutely journey-focused, Gary Vee's stuff. I was watching one the other day and he was sat at the airport late at night just going, this stuff's not glamorous. And I was also at the airport thinking, this stuff's not glamorous. My feet hurt. So yes, he is very much living in the now column, and that's what he sells as well. Services in that now column. What else? Go-to. Tell me about Go-to.
Zoe Foster-Blake's
Yes!
brand. Yeah.
I actually bought that the other day because I was so engaged, and then I forgot. Yes. She's amazing.
Yeah, and it's all about skincare, so it's all about the vibrancy of that.
Yeah. And what's really interesting about Go-To is if you do this stuff well, your product does not have to be complex. I mean, she sells, 5 products? That's it?
Yeah.
Nothing.
Oh,
Oh, is that? Okay. Well, when I bought it, was only about 5. And she tells incredible stories. Check out their Instagram feed, actually, from a human storytelling perspective. And we're going to get into being a translator in a minute, from being a translator, because she was a beauty editor. And so she knew beauty inside out. She's now also a mother, and so she knows getting it done fast, inside out. And she fully owns that space. Go-To fully own that space. Mine at the moment is, who knows Kayla Itsness? Yeah, you were talking about her, yeah. So Kayla Itsness, for those of you who don't know, she was a personal trainer. She's actually one of the most influential people on the internet in the world now. I think she's from Queensland? Adelaide. She's from Adelaide. Millions and millions and millions of dollars worth of turnaround. And what she did was she took her knowledge of personal training and her knowledge of mums, again, and she put together a program. It was called Beyond, was it called Beyond Baby? Beyond Baby?
That's the new one.
Is that the new one?
It was looking at beach body. Bikini body guys.
Bikini Body, BBG. It's called the BBG program. It's just a PDF. It's only a PDF. And she has sold gazillions of these PDFs just by living in this column, personalized stories. Now, how's this for the 50% rule? I had stalked her online while I was pregnant. I was watching everything she did. She does these little mini workouts, how you do this, doing crunches in under 30 seconds. I watch them, I don't do them. I probably do watch them. Like a meal plan, what do you put in your smoothies, all this stuff. I was watching, stalking. She would have never known I existed. And then I had my son. And then about 6 weeks after I had my son, I bought it. Now, she would have no idea I existed prior to that point. But she stood out as a micro-authority to me. And when I was ready to move, I moved fast and I just purchased. I'm going to share this one with you. This is one that is just really capturing my attention at the moment. Vino Mofo. So know Vino Mofo? Yes. Love Vino Mofo. So Vino Mofo, for those of you who don't know, has completely disrupted the wine industry. So founder Justin Dry, he was very passionate about wine. He was also very passionate about, just not the dry kind of wine, but wine in kind of a funky, party, social kind of a way. And he started this with a founder in his garage and ended up building it into like this multi-million-dollar company. But here's what's interesting about Vino Mofo to me. Not only do they live in that now column, but they take the best of high touch and the best of high tech and they bring it together from an influence point of view. 60% of all of their sales come in from their marketing, directly from their marketing. 60% of all sales, attributable. So when I first heard of Vino Mofo, I wasn't a customer, and a friend of mine just kept banging on about it and banging on about it. And so I called her, Shami, some friends here who'll know Shami, and I called Sham and I was like, you just keep talking about Vino Mofo. Can you tell me, what is it that you love about it? And she said, I love it because it's my friend Nikki. My friend Nikki calls me once about every 6 to 8 weeks. And she calls me and she says, hey Sham, I know you're usually running out of wine around about now. She makes her sound like an alcoholic. She's not, sometimes. And so I know you're running out of wine around about now. I wanted to tell you about a couple of things that have been happening. Our marketing team put together a video recently about a new rosé that's come out. Now, I know you loved the Shiraz last time, but this time, this rosé, we did a comparison between rosés and Shirazes, and we think that they go together brilliantly. And we actually put a video together, and it's on our Instagram account. I'll shoot it over to you. It's quite funny. Not only that, but if you buy this particular case of Shiraz, we've done a collaboration with a local chef. And they've put together a meal plan because I know you love entertaining. And that meal plan has ingredients, recipes, and also which wines go with which. And not only that, but if you're able to say yes right now, there's an incentive in play. And I can give you another box for half price. What do you think she says? She's like, I just say yes when I pick up the phone now. She's like, I just don't even need to waste time having the conversation. So, does that feel salesy? No, it doesn't feel salesy. And this is where, again, contribution is the opposite of force. It doesn't feel salesy. And that is where marketing and sales work together brilliantly. They become the glue for influence design. Now, I spoke to Justin Dry, who's the founder. I actually interviewed him for my podcast because I just kept hearing about Vino Mofo, and I was like, okay, you just talk to me about what you're doing. And we had this really fascinating discussion about how it started, what happened. But he said something that really stuck with me. He said, the biggest mistake I made in building Vino Mofo was this. We got some investment on board. It was a lot of money. And part of the conditions of getting the investment money was that we had to put together a traditional advert, television advertising. So I didn't want to do it because I knew in my gut that it lived in the then column. And everything that we had been doing that had been working lived in the now column. He said, but it was part of the conditions of the investment, so we did. And it cost $4.5 million. That's okay. $4.5 million, and it got us nothing. It got us nothing. Because it was in the then column. And so everything that he knew worked from an influence attention point of view was in the now column, and it was working. They were doing an incredible, incredible job. So what is it about Vino Mofo that I think you can, if you just crystallize it down, that they do really, really well? And it's this one thing, and this is the number one trend for me, the companies and people that are standing out at the moment. They became the primary translator of their space. Now, primary translator is someone that goes out onto the fringes, to places I neither have the time, the experience, or the bandwidth to go, and brings back information to me about things I care about in my language in easy-to-digest chunks. And if you look at every single person and brand you follow religiously, where you read everything that they write, watch everything they do, buy every new product they bring out, I promise you it's because they translate something important for you. Because we have no shortage of information right now. And if anyone sat there just thinking, oh, I just wish I had more info. None of us. We've got so much. We're well past the information age. We have so much information. I can watch a Harvard lecture from my phone in an airport lounge. We have no shortage of information. What we are short on, and the people that we follow, are the translators, the people who can translate all of that information for us to our world using our language. They are the people that we buy from. They're the people that we follow, and the brands that we follow. So becoming the primary translator of your space. How do you do that? You do that, and I'm actually going to give you a bit of a task for a break, because no one needs an actual break where you go and do other things. questions. How you do that is you become a student of the world of your consumer. Become a student of their world and you become fluent in their questions. Now this is going to be huge, I believe, going forwards, questions, especially with the rise of voice search. Because how do we search? We search in questions. What's the best restaurant in Melbourne? Now when voice search comes up, who's got a Siri or a Google Home or an Alexa? Yeah. When it takes over, and the predictions are that at some point in the next 5 years, the majority of our search will be via voice, our children will look at us and go, did you ever have to just type what you were thinking? I want you to say what you were thinking. We are going to search in questions. And unless you are fluent in the questions of your target market and you own the answers, then you're not going to get found. So you need to get forensic with this stuff. I literally, if you looked at my mobile phone right now, and this is something that you can also do, there's, notes in your iPhone. I have a note, and it's just called questions. And every time anyone asks me a question, anytime a client asks me a question, or someone asks me a question as part of the podcast, or a question comes through on LinkedIn, whatever it is, I write it down. And then I will either A, go find the answer and bring it back to them, or I'll write a blog post on it. I'll do a podcast episode on it. I'll create a video on it. I'll go out into my network, see who else can answer that question, and see if they'll help me answer it. You become fluent in the questions of your target market. So, I'm going to kick off to break now. Before we do break, there was a LinkedIn exercise. Abby?
How good was Julie for this morning? Round of applause to Julie. So I'm going to do the exercise a little bit later, just in interest of caffeine coffee. If anyone who knows me, in my world, coffee is like right here at the number one. So we're going to take a 15-minute break, if that's okay, until 11. Before you do, I have an execution challenge for you. Julie mentioned her podcast, An Interview with Justin. It is brilliant. I was actually pinging her about it the other day. So you need to subscribe to Julie's podcast, Inside Influence, and check out the episode with Justin, because I think it actually brings to life everything that Julie has talked about. So that's Inside Influence.